Here to discuss Wenn-ings in a Funeral, episode 10 of Best Medicine from the Unspoiled by Doc Martin perspective are Erica and Patty. Welcome back to Podcast Portwenn.
Hi, everybody.
Good to see you. So Patty, since you've been out for a while, I'm just going to simulate the lunch table conversation here and say, hey, did you watch Best Medicine last night?
I did. Actually, I watched it today, but yes.
So tell me.
What did I think? Okay, The Long Way to Kiss. Let's see. Okay. In some ways, I was actually surprised with the kiss. I thought they might drag it out longer. And, there were definitely some funny moments. It was fun guessing what was going to be the thing that caused the, the behavior. Was it going to be something in the tea? Was it going to be, I thought of mold. And that was close because it was something, with the wallpaper. I mean, when they showed the wallpaper, I said, oh, that looks like mold. That's definitely it. And then that wasn't.
Because it was green?
Yeah, that wasn't quite it. But, that was kind of interesting. I guess he's told Louisa now about the blood thing, but we still don't really know exactly if he was this way all the time. Because I still wonder, how could he ever have been a surgeon if he's that bad? Because I'm not super great with blood, but I can handle looking at a syringe. When I get a blood test, I can look at that and I don't faint. It's just if I saw a ruptured spleen, I might have some trouble with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I too thought the kid was, I wouldn't have taken his symptoms seriously either, that boy who cried wolf thing. So yeah, I was thinking to myself, because earlier on I kind of complained that, is this going to be formulaic where the doctor gets misunderstood and everybody's ganging up on him, and then he saves the day, so everybody has to be nicer. This one wasn't quite like that.
Right.
So that was kind of nice, because I don't think I want the same thing week after week after week.
I mean, we did end up with sort of a community gathering, but it was a funeral. These things happen. So to me, that's okay, because it's not like they don't schedule a person to take a flyer off the cliff with the bird migration every year, so it's not a town-wide thing, right?
Yeah, and it's not a funeral is quote normal thing, not some quirky thing that this weird town dreamt up. So
right, yeah. So it wasn't as formulaic because it was an organically occurring thing.
Yeah, but we've talked before about the couple that owns the Salty Breeze, and I'm still not super excited. I like the one a little better than the other, but I still feel like they're a little too stereotyped, and I don't know.
I don't think you've had the opportunity to look at all the podcasts. You've looked at all the episodes, right?
No, I have seen all the episodes. I'm caught up on the episodes.
Yeah. So my take has been, I really like George, and I think Greg is something of a prima donna.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I definitely like George better. So. How about you, Erica? We just sat down at the lunch table, and what did you think of the episode?
I liked the episode. I was a little bit nervous when Agnes came on, and I thought, oh my God, another character that's just so out there and overdone. And not that I'm happy that she jumped off a cliff, but I was happy to realize it was not writing or scripting. It was more obviously the arsenic in the walls. Kind of went back to that initial frustration, and I got on board. So I got back on board with the episode. I thought it was interesting because if anybody listened to the podcast from last week's episode, I did mention what was going to happen with Mark calling Martin his best bud all the time, and increasingly so. And he's going to eventually find out that there's this thing happening with Louisa and Martin. And I predicted it. I knew it was going to happen, that there was going to be some kind of fallout from that. I'm interested to see where they're going to, how they're going to play that. Obviously, they kind of he walked away at this moment back into the hospital. But I would think next episode we might see something.
Yeah, that has to be followed up on.
Yeah. And I loved that Elaine and Martin were working on his IV stuff and trying, he's trying. And then in the ambulance, it was Louisa that kept them together. I will say I closed my eyes a lot during this episode because I hate needles going through skin. So that was a tough one for me. But I get the concept. I know what happened.
I can watch that, but if I had seen the blood splurting from the spleen, that would have been too much for me. So everybody's got their thing.
Yeah, that I handled. That was fine. But the needles I didn't love. But I thought it was great that Louisa brought him through that whole surgery, and she kept him together, and he did it. So major progress.
Major progress. And we saw her in the closet with him last week, sort of Martin focus on me, right? So she seems like she's going to be a cheerleader for him.
Yeah, that scene I thought was pretty realistic. It just seemed believable, and I have a high bar for that, so.
Right. Now, are you talking about the scene in the closet from last week?
No, not the closet. Well, maybe that too, but I meant more in the ambulance. The way she was helping him didn't seem contrived. It seemed believable to me.
What do you think of Peter Cronk?
He fooled me. I thought it was definitely a boy who cried wolf. And, some of the things that he looked up were kind of ridiculous. I think that kid's really smart. So when they got to the one where it's ectopic pregnancy, come on, he's like 11, 12 years old. He knows he can't get pregnant.
Right.
But in general, they fooled me that he was really sick. And when the caretaker said, hey, he didn't go in the house, he wasn't exposed to that, and he's been like this all day, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah, we got something else going on here. What about you, Erica?
I thought he was a hypochondriac at first. When they were up on the top of the mountain, though, and he came out and said his pee looked brown, I caught on that there was definitely something more to this story. I thought that at first, maybe not even a hypochondriac so much as just he seems to really have an affection for the doctor. And I thought perhaps he was trying to find something that the doctor and him could connect on and focus, being taken care of or paid attention to. But once they got up to the top and he said that about his brown urine, I knew there was more to the story. And I was just waiting for it to unfold. Yeah, I feel bad.
I mean, they got a little distracted there when Agnes takes a flyer off the cliff. I was very glad that Peter was behind the tree at the time,
Yeah, I loved when Martin said to Elaine, I believe Agnes's sister was in the house, and he says to Elaine, and he did this thing with his fingers where he was walking and jumped off the cliff.
Yes, I thought that was very effectively done.
Right, instead of saying it out loud.
The two women, I thought, were pretty convincing in a way. For a sitcom. For a sitcom, I thought they did a very good job of being batty, following their little birds around and stuff. And you knew something was up right off the bat when she calls Martin Dr. Reese.
Right. But I just
so you're thinking
it could be
like a dementia aspect or something.
But the thing that I found surprising was they came across as batty, but not particularly mean or demanding. And so to hear Aunt Sarah's story about how they treated her and expected this, that, and the other from her and didn't remember her in their will and everything didn't seem to jive with, otherwise just being batty.
Yeah, and spitting the omelet, like she didn't like the omelet, so she spit it into her hair.
And I'm like, why did you go back? I know it's a small town, but boundaries, lady.
Sarah seemed genuinely pleased that there was going to be a finite amount of time between how much longer, because it seems like she wasn't going to bother taking care of Millicent, because she said starvation ought to sit in by Christmas.
Yeah, I thought that was a little inconsistent, because it seemed like if she's not going to go back there and take care of her, why does she care what happens to her? She could last forever or not. But it seemed like...
Probably guilty conscience. Patty was just talking about how it was inconsistent to see the Cloofe sisters, who seemed like, nice, although delusional, ended up being so mean to Aunt Sarah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I don't really understand, because it sounds like Aunt Sarah did a lot for them.
Yeah.
And yet the groundskeeper did take care of the grounds, but didn't seem to take care of them individually and personally. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we'll touch more on why.
I'm sorry. He didn't seem to like them either. He said, that woman's crazy. So I wasn't sure if it was just the poison or if they were mean to him and he just didn't go on and on about it like Aunt Sarah did.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Right. I'd be interested to see about Aunt Sarah if there's more to it. I mean, she's such a giving person. I can't imagine she would allow these two women to take that kind of advantage of her, but at the same time be so upset about the whole thing happening. I don't know.
It seemed like, I could see Aunt Sarah continuing to do things for people, even if they're mean to her. I mean, she's got a spine to her, But I could see her continuing to do it because she's just that kind of person. But I think it's horrible to think that these little old biddies were so mean.
Yeah, I didn't quite see it that way. I see her as she would work it out, but she would stand up to them and say, "Hey, you want me to come? You treat me better." And they would. That's kind of how I see Aunt Sarah.
Yeah, so she might do something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure. But she certainly was thrilled when Agnes died. And poor Martin was like, I am appalled.
Yeah.
For a moment, I thought she did it.
Oh!
For a brief moment, I really
think we saw that she didn't. You know, we saw her kind of jump.
Yeah.
No, the arsenic poisoning.
Oh. That fleetingly crossed my mind, but I eliminated that one pretty quickly.
Yeah, but there was a point where I was like, wait, is this like a big plot twist here that we're going in a different direction? Aunt Sarah's not so nice.
Right.
I thought the sister might have done it to the other, like something in the tea to the other sister. And I was trying to figure it out because it seemed like arsenic and old lace, only in arsenic and old lace, the two old ladies worked together to poison other people. So if they were poisoning each other, yeah, maybe that was the twist, but not even close.
You do see Agnes sort of, I don't even know what the adjective is, but when Millicent is in the waiting room and she's just munching on crackers, and Agnes is like, have you been eating crackers? She seemed like a scold to Millicent.
Well, if she's an older sister, maybe that would be normal.
I like the reaction with Martin when he got the call and he called to check on the tea, and then they said that they detected arsenic, and he like immediately ran over and very aggressive and dramatically knocked the bottle out of Elaine's hand. And obviously he's a doctor, so he's going to want to make sure he takes care of people. But at the same time, I thought it was almost like a lovey, like, I think there was a little love behind that.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of terror that somebody he cares for, hurting themselves.
Right.
Not on purpose.
Because, I mean, I'm trying to remember the proceeding of things. So we've got Agnes, who drinks the tea and throws herself off the cliff. And then we get Millicent in for a blood test. And I guess, did she have her blood tested because she was also having some stomach pain? And that's right, she was following the bird around, right? So it's her blood that gets tested with the arsenic. But then he's thinking, well, the tea might have just safe mushrooms in it, but that arsenic's coming from somewhere, so it must be the tea. And then he whacks the tea out of Elaine's hands. But it was, I agree, it was also good to see Elaine working with the doc on, and basically allowing him to take her blood.
Yeah, but I think she knows that that's her ticket to staying there and getting paid. If I do this for him, I can do all my different streaming shows and whatever crazy thing I want.
Yeah. I mean, since you haven't talked about last week, we've got Vanessa coming in with her radical honesty and giving Elaine a little talking to about just creating more garbage. And you can see the effect in this thing of her potentially doing a new career.
Yeah.
Well, and she did refer herself to garbage again in this episode. In the beginning, the patient said, what are we filming today? And she said, nothing. So it's weighing on her.
I don't think that's going to last, though. I think something will come. In some way, she'll justify it to herself or something. We'll see.
Yeah. I think she would be great. I mean, she's clearly ambitious, right? And it seems like she's picking things that are attention-getting careers.
Yeah.
Right? Says the podcast host. But I could see Elaine, based on acting out her poem, she kind of feels like maybe she's got a new calling. And if you combine that with Vanessa telling her you could be creating art, but instead you're just filling the internet with garbage, she might go the art route.
She did say she was going to apply to drama school in New York City.
Yeah. And you figured she's only got 3 episodes left to see this out. And, maybe that's what happens to Elaine at the end of this season. Maybe off she goes and we get a new receptionist. Who knows? I like the actress.
Maybe she goes during the break. They always have between seasons.
Yeah.
They fast forward a few months or something. So maybe they will have her go away to drama school and come back for some reason. Whether it's wasn't successful, didn't like it, missed home, I don't know.
Yeah. So Patty, if you were to rate this episode against all the episodes you've seen so far, where does it fall?
I think I liked it. I'm not sure it'd be the very top, but I liked it more than some of the others, so it would be near the top, above the median. I don't know.
Are you in agreement with us that the last like 3 or 4 episodes all seem to be kind of getting better versus the early ones.
Yes and no. In some ways, I think they may not just be better, but because it's building, you know, by the time you get to the 8th or 9th episode or wherever we're on, we've learned some of the clues, and so now it connects better just because it's the 8th episode. That I think there's some benefit there. Yeah, I would say I think I like it better. And even though pretty much everybody is quirky, I'm starting to have some affection for their quirks, which in the beginning, you know, it took a while to get that. They had to earn it.
Yeah. Yes. Erica, where does this one rate in yours?
I'd say towards the top. I mean, last week still stands as my favorite so far, with the depth and the growth of the characters. And I liked the storyline on top of it anyway. I would say this would rank 2, 3.
Yeah, I agree.
I liked the storyline is starting to unfold. We're seeing much more character development. As Patty said before, last week, finally, we broke that pattern of this weird town event that's huge. And then the doc has some strange disease. He wants to cancel everything and everyone's mad at him. And then we come back. So this week and last week, we kind of broke from that, and I appreciated that.
I was also of the impression that this was one of my favorite episodes, and I think, Patty, I think both of your points are good. I like the fact that this one was a drama more than anything.
There were a couple of moments where we laughed out loud, but yeah. They definitely mix drama and comedy in this show.
But the drama prior to, I think, maybe the Bog Father or whatever, it seemed like that sort of contrived Martin screws everything up, and then he does something miraculous, and then everybody likes him again. I think starting with the Bog Father, you get this, he's really kind of hurt and doesn't want to be the Bog Man, and you get some pathos there. And then when you go into the episode with his parents, that to me, I was just of huge interest to me, just because the Rosemary thing, I need to know the Rosemary thing, and we still don't know it, and it's killing me. But, and I sounded like Mark there, oh no. Yeah, he's rubbing off on me. So that's why that episode to me was like, I couldn't wait to hear what they were going to talk about. And then they still don't talk about it. Now I'm like, I want to know.
You know, they did let us have the kiss, so they're holding out on all the facts about the blood and all the facts about his sister.
I still believe that, you know, there's no way, given his current inability to even take blood from someone, that he had this phobia this whole time. And I think we can take that as an assumption that he did not have it all the time.
Yeah. Something maybe got triggered in that surgery that didn't go well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, and if you put it together, right, with the fact that this family never talked about it, so something traumatic happened, a 6-year-old cannot process that.
Right.
The parents don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a 6-year-old would be afraid of blood, maybe. Yeah.
And, you know, you figure now he doesn't know how to handle it. I don't know what he did with it. I don't know how his parents treated him, right? We know they parked him with Aunt Sarah, for the summers at least. Did seeing this girl who looked so much like, he was an 8-year-old girl who was in a car accident, who had the same thing that his sister, and he was in the car and probably saw his sister, right? My thinking is that just brings back everything that he repressed.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he developed a blood phobia that keeps going, but it could just be as simple as all of a sudden he had all of these flashbacks and what was in his eyes and what was in his nose. And, you know, that's what was there and that's what he's connecting it to. And now every time he sees blood or something, he has that, he experiences whatever it was that he repressed.
My guess is that the person on the kid on the table had some kind of like massive bleed out and blood just got, or like they were finished with the surgery and the heart, they were closing and the heart artery just burst and blood sprayed. And so there was, like they show on some of the other medical dramas, how like it just keeps coming and people are covered in it. And then the girl dies and he's covered in it and that triggers something. I don't know. That's just my guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're all still guessing because they haven't told us.
Yeah, they haven't really given much of a hint on that. All they've done is had him admitted to 2 people, and that's it.
Right. Just that he has a phobia and not really.
Phobia. Right. Right.
And he didn't talk about Rosemary, right? He told Aunt Sarah that about the surgery, but I don't think Aunt Sarah even knows he's got a blood phobia. Louisa knows he has a blood phobia.
I don't think he's told.
And Elaine knows he has a blood phobia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? What did you guys think at the end of the last episode of 9, Mark is talking about moving on, which, I take to mean moving on from Louisa.
Yeah.
But he now sees, as we were discussing last week with Doug, he now sees Martin and Louisa are going to be a thing, and is that something he can manage? Do you think Mark hangs around?
I think he just meant, okay, it's not going to work with Louisa, I'm going to move on. And I don't think he had any clue at that point that she might move on with Martin.
Do you think he stays in town now that he has seen this developing, or do you think he looks for greener pastures in some other town?
What is he capable of? The sheriff, you mean? Move on? Yeah. I could see him trying and then having to come back because he's not really a good sheriff. He doesn't ever have to do anything.
I don't think he's going to move on. I mean, he's been here his whole life. He knows every single person in town. His mom's in town and apparently has something wrong with her neck for the entire season because she wears that weird neck brace. As Patty said, he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that he has a lot of prospects.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see, are they going to take the avenue of him pretending he doesn't know and seeing if they'll confess to him?
Yeah.
Or if he goes in true Mark fashion and overreacts and goes a bit wonky.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know which one is going to be the way it works, but I don't think he's going to leave town.
I'm going to guess that he acts like, that he doesn't fess up to them, that he knows. And then it's going to explode one episode. We'll see.
Well, so Martin, they have the kiss. And then what? What was that ending?
Well, why did he think it was necessary to say, let's pretend it didn't happen? She clearly didn't want to say that.
Yeah, and she wanted him to come in.
Well, in fairness, he kissed her.
Yeah.
Right? So he kissed her. Perhaps he's feeling like maybe he pushed himself on her.
She kissed him back.
I didn't take that as a viewer. Right. But he seems to be a very stand-up man.
Yeah.
And he seems to do things kind of by the book and tries to be respectful. And I wonder if he thinks like, well, maybe I crossed the line, so I'm going to give her an out. Not realizing listen, he doesn't pick up on social cues as well either. She did invite him inside, but I kind of got the sense like he was giving her the out as a respectful thing. And when she didn't say anything opposing him, he assumed he was on the right track. Although, if you can see any woman react, she obviously had, she was choked up, glassy-eyed, it should have been clear, but he's a guy and, I'll get chastised for this in the comments or something, but they're not as observant of those types of things.
And she had kissed him at the blueberry thing. So it's not like she wasn't willing here.
Do you think he just panicked?
I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, I have a theory, but I'm going to keep it to myself. But, I just was surprised when he said we should laugh it off, which is what we would both want. He could have stopped at, it's been a long night. That was lovely, but let's just go home, get a good night's sleep, regroup. But to say, let's just laugh it off because I'm sure that's what we both want, I was like, you idiot.
They want you to say, the writers want you to think that.
Yeah.
Maybe he really wanted her to pursue. Maybe he was feeling vulnerable and awkward. I mean, she saved him from the blood thing.
Yeah.
She essentially brought him. He was the most vulnerable he's ever been because here he has to deal with the blood thing. Thankfully, she knows this kid would have died. He's beating himself up because he misdiagnosed or blew him off as the kid who cried wolf. And obviously the adrenaline did help him go in for the kiss. Maybe he was the one just feeling really vulnerable and was wanting her to say, no, I wanted it. And
yeah. I don't know. I'm looking forward now that we got to wait 2 weeks. Very annoying. All right. Is there anything else you can think of about that episode or about the series so far that you'd want to bring to the attention of our viewers?
I had an interesting observation. So we've seen Martin with the dog, and the dog clearly wants to be around Martin, follows him around like a dog, is in his home, is in his space. No matter how many times he says no, the dog keeps showing up. We also have Mark, who the doc keeps kind of pushing away where Mark keeps coming back and keeps begging for his attention, basically, and following him around.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it was just it was, for some reason, it hit me this episode, and maybe it was because of the whole kiss, but it's interesting that he tends to push people away, or animals away, that like almost unconditionally love him.
Yeah, true.
Like he doesn't
interesting.
handle it.
Yeah. Interesting thought. Yeah.
If he called Mark his best friend, Mark would be, his head would explode. He would be, you're right, like overjoyed. But he can't.
Yeah.
He can't let the dog in. He can't let Mark in. He doesn't totally turn them away, but he keeps them at arm's length and keeps telling them no.
Yeah. Yeah. Patty, do you have anything?
Nothing more than what we've already said.
Pretty well covered. All right, cool. Well, we'll be back. We'll have a little hiatus here for 2 weeks, unless we decide to do something, a little catch-up session with folks who've missed. But yeah, so folks out in watching land, if you've enjoyed this, please like it and subscribe to the feed. If you have comments, drop the comments in, and I do respond to them. In the meantime, thank you guys for being on the podcast again, and thanks everybody for watching. We're just about to move into the Doc Martin spoiled section of this episode, so if you are a Best Medicine only person, this is where you would want to bail. I don't want you to be spoiled by some things we're going to be discussing, and believe me, there are many, many Doc Martin things to discuss from this episode. So, thank you for viewing. Please sign off now if you don't want to be spoiled. This is your final warning. Okay, fresh off watching Wenn-ings in a Funeral, episode 10 of Best Medicine, I'm joined by Chris, in person again. Welcome back to Podcast Portwenn.
Yeah. Nice to see you in person again.
Yep, good to have you here. So I know when I was watching the trailer, I had a whole bunch of plot arcs in my mind, like the chuff birds, when we saw bird watching, when I saw two older sisters, I was thinking of Janet and Beth Saul, Peter Cronk with all of his potentially misdiagnosed problems. I'm thinking his spleen, he needs a surgery. So that was pretty much what was coming to my mind on the trailer. But we saw even more than that. What'd you think of the episode?
Oh, the episode I thought was very good. I think they're getting better and better.
I agree.
It's hard to get better than the 9th episode with Martin Clunes, but this was pretty good. I think the characterizations are pretty good. The storylines are good and, very similar in some respects to Doc Martin.
Yeah.
But I think the characterization of the people, I think, is good. And they did have a couple times in the episode where they did have the whole village gathering together. But that seemed okay. I mean, it's somebody's funeral. So it's, she died, and they have to do this.
It was not pre-scheduled.
It seems to arise from the people inside the village.
Yeah, one hopes this is not a annual event to have someone throw themselves off a cliff.
When the birds come. The birds.
Yes.
So, I like that.
Yeah, that worked.
And we do have the second kiss of Martin and Louisa.
Ah, right. This was a much more passionate kiss.
Yes.
And it was him to her.
And she gave right back.
Yes, she did.
So,
and poor Mark got to watch.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Poor Mark, yes, poor Mark.
Yeah.
Which, of course, Mark had a thing for Louisa in Doc Martin.
Yes.
But I think he knew in Doc Martin that he didn't have a chance, whereas this Mark actually had 8 years of a chance. And I don't know how he had a chance if he thought his goldfish ran off and joined the band. Anyway.
He acted a little strange after seeing Martin and Louisa kiss, but that could put you in shock.
Kind of hoping that style changes over time, but creative choices and all.
Much better than the first couple episodes.
Yes. When he was in his hurt and macho phase and all that. So this is a Mark that I can live with. So we see Agnes and Millicent Cloofe. The first thing I thought of, actually even with the trailer, when I saw Agnes Cloofe and she was kind of making her move on Martin, I was thinking of, is it Carrie Wilson? The Wilson Hotel lady with the dog that Martin runs over? But she was way too old for it, but I just was thinking old lady, pillar of town, like somebody well-known in the town, rich lady. That might have been what they were riffing on. But then I really am convinced that they were giving the Janet and Beth Saul a little hat tip, not really the plot that we're used to, where Janet is experimenting on Beth.
The crazy old bat.
Well, she's a spooky old bat in
Spooky
the
old
original.
bat.
She's a crazy old bat in this one. So that was definitely a reference, but the plot line was different, right? But what about the arsenic?
What about the arsenic? Yeah, in the original Doc Martin, yeah, a neighbor of Aunt Ruth steals her hubcaps, and she tries to find out about that. His mother is actually having problems. She thinks her son is trying to kill her, and it is traced eventually back to the wallpaper, green wallpaper, in her house. And her house has a leak, and her son is trying to patch it up and is disturbing the wallpaper. And eventually, yes.
I think he's just stripping it in the original. It's one of the projects that he starts that he never finishes. Whereas in this one, there's a leak.
And disturbing the wallpaper, his mother's getting exposed to arsenic and is going off the deep end.
Yep.
So, yeah.
She seems very paranoid.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the symptoms of her arsenic exposure.
But they don't have paranoia and
Well, she's becoming unbalanced.
certainly delusions, right?
Yeah, her mental processing is not working very
Right.
well.
They hint at some poisoning.
Now, do they do blood tests? I don't remember.
Well, they do.
I think so.
Well, it sounds like they did a blood test in Best Medicine. That's how we found out about the arsenic.
Right.
But
in
it
the
wasn't.
autopsy.
I mean, it seems like in Best Medicine, I thought they were hinting at poisoning.
Well, they were hinting at poisoning, but really we were expecting bad mushrooms.
We were expecting bad mushrooms until we bump into what's the dude with the gun in the forest? Clark, is it?
Clark Flanagan, yeah.
Clark Flanagan. Okay.
Right, and he's been their groundskeeper. It seems like he is potentially getting ready to
He's got a
take
motive,
over.
right?
Yeah, take over. He wants the mansion.
He's in the will,
Yeah,
so maybe he's popping off these sisters.
yeah.
Anyway,
Right.
completely different plot.
Well, yeah, but there is the arsenic plot.
We see Martin and Louisa making a very awkward date.
Yes. Well, and that harkens back to Louisa and Martin Ellingham being awkward several times. Are they going to do something?
I would say there's much more realistic awkwardness in Doc Martin.
I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, completely agree.
yeah. And that kind of like is I always feel like Doc Martin is a documentary of real people, whereas Best Medicine is a sitcom. So we're watching a TV show. Yeah, so that was very awkward, but... And then Peter gets foisted upon them, which is a plot arc, right? Peter getting foisted upon Martin. He takes him to Louisa, and then he escapes from Louisa's, ends up at Martin's. So there's a similarity there. I didn't even think of that until just now. Yeah, yeah. The golden-winged warbler is a replacement for the chuff.
Right, the chuffs.
But we didn't have anybody throw themselves willingly off of a cliff.
No, but somebody did go over the cliffs, but survived.
Right. Do we know his name? Was it the baker? Was it Mike?
Could be.
I don't remember if it was Mike, but I think it was the baker.
The baker.
Yeah. And the chuff eggs were valuable.
Right.
I'll never forget seeing one of those behind-the-scene Doc Martin things where Martin Clunes is actually rappelling down that cliff.
Really?
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, so doing his own stunts. Well done. And then he drills the hole.
Right.
Right. So.
For the
Wait a second.
brain bleed.
Yeah, so the Chuff Birds is the same. It's On the Edge. It's that 9th episode of season 2. Yeah. Because it has one of my favorite scenes in it where Jonathan, he's got the gun.
Oh.
you know what I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
So he comes out and Gilbert Spencer's there. And so he's the colonel, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, the colonel, the baker, don't you people have names?
Right.
Anyway, great scene. I thought it was funny that Aunt Sarah thought the house was going to be left to her and it's left to Clark. And you think, well, maybe he is poisoning them.
Right, so he could get the house.
So you kind of have that poisoning plot line. Yeah. And he's not doing it, which is like the son of...
Right, true.
And he doesn't want the house anyway.
Right, what's he going to do with it?
It's falling down. So, we have the Peter Cronk arc, which is a huge thing in this, right?
Right. So when Peter starts diagnosing himself with all these strange things, but Martin says, you're just a hypochondriac, which he kind of is. And then, but I have this, and I have that, and I have this other thing. And then when he starts to get to the symptoms of his spleen problem. Yeah, he says, well, my urine is kind of orange or it's brown. And Martin says, well, yeah, he's just thinking he's coming up with more and more of the same things.
It's just part of what he's been doing.
He doesn't really seriously pay much attention with regard to that. Until in front of the house, Peter is lying down and Clark says, he was never in the house.
Right. Yes.
So those symptoms can't come from the house, can't be part of the arsenic poisoning.
Right.
And then he starts to put it together. Oh, pain in the left shoulder and pain in the abdomen. And then he puts it together as, oh, this could be a spleen problem.
Right.
And then he starts to take Peter seriously and realizes that he needs to get to the hospital.
Yeah. And Martin, he never had the benefit, like in Doc Martin, of there had been an accident that they knew about.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then, so I obviously have to get Peter to the hospital right away. And then as they're trying to drag Millicent Cloofe away, she says, no, I can't go, and runs back to the house and bumps into Peter, who goes flying onto the ground and probably ruptures his spleen.
Right.
And then we have to take him to the hospital in the ambulance. There's an EMT who is not really that useful as an EMT.
I was a trainee.
He's a trainee.
Yeah.
And, but they do take him in, or they do travel with him. And then Peter's blood pressure drops. So,
Yeah. And that's part and parcel of this is they don't have the benefit of the accident. But Martin Best kind of misses things, but it's because it's buried in the hypochondria or the self-diagnosis with the internet. Martin Ellingham knows about the accident, but he did get sent to the hospital and he did have tests, but they only did rib cage, like bone things. So he puts it together based on the left shoulder and the abdomen and immediately jumps to this is probably your spleen, finds out from his mom, yes, it is the spleen. And you know, they want to fly them. There's no air ambulance available. It's going to take 45 minutes to be there. Similar to the EMT here. No, 30 minutes, I think. 45 and
30 versus 45.
Best. So it's a long time, and there's not enough time.
Right.
So the BP drops.
Substantial difference between Martin Best and Martin Ellingham. Martin Best, as he's confronted with this, he's much more human. He's aware that he may vomit, and they try and make arrangements for that. But his preparation for the surgery, he looks like he's steeling himself up for this. He knows what he has to do. He knows what to do. Of course, he has the blood problem, which he's not sure how to deal with yet. So he's steeling himself up for that. So Martin Ellingham, though, he's got ice water.
I don't really agree with that. So, I mean, Martin Best passes out with blood. He has a much worse problem with blood than Martin Ellingham has at this stage of the game. This is the end of season 1, all right? So he is vomiting. He's not passing out. He doesn't pass out for seasons,
Right.
all right? So they both are like, okay, they now know they have to do surgery. So Martin Best is like, I may vomit, which is interesting because I don't know if we see him do a lot of vomiting. We see him more passing out than anything. But we got Louisa doing this whole thing about getting him a bag and all this other stuff. Whereas Martin Ellingham is just after he gets the blade, you know, he's steeling himself. He's like taking a breath and he's like, I may vomit. But then he just goes for it.
Right.
Like, Louisa's not helping at all. Louisa's an observer here.
Yeah, in Best Medicine, Louisa is a much more active participant, and they're making her a much more concerned person. So she is aware of Martin's problem and does what she can to help him deal with it.
Right.
Even as his fingers are inside Peter Cronk's body to try and help with the spleen artery, she's telling him to look at me, just trying to keep him
he's like
calm.
fading.
Yeah, right.
Whereas Martin Ellingham's not fading. He's competent. He's able to do it. He's just hoping he doesn't throw up.
Right.
You know. But the two of them did have to steel themselves for doing it. And you could tell the lead up was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to do the surgery. Like, I really don't want to have to do this, but I'm gonna have to do it to save this kid.
Yeah. It shows through more in Martin Best.
Because he's got a worse problem at this point, I think.
But you can sort of see him sort of steeling himself.
Yeah. It's more apparent. It's more physically outside.
Just you can see on his face he has more expression.
Yeah.
So Martin Ellingham, very little expression.
And one thing I noticed that was different, or two things actually, there's so many plot arcs in Best Medicine that they mix up from all sorts of different seasons, right?
They do.
In Doc Martin, this episode has had the development of Peter Cronk as a character who gets picked on in school, and who Louisa, you can tell he's one of her favorite students. She's his favorite teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And she counsels him, if they tease you, you have to laugh, and then you can be one of them. And you really get this parallel, right, that the Martins of the world and the Peters of the world are very similar, and she's partial to them. They've used the whole episode as an opportunity to do character development amongst Martin and Louisa by introducing this Peter Cronk guy who's the bullied kids. You know, you start getting more of that. Whereas in Best Medicine, you've got the arsenic thing. You've got like all these different plot arcs. You know, the Beth Saul and Janet Saul nods and all that.
Well, you can still tell that in Best Medicine, Peter Cronk is still a favorite student of Louisa. And she knows that he's very bright.
And Martin knows he's bright too, because we've seen Peter far more in Best Medicine than we've seen. And we also have in Doc Martin, we've got the whole Adrian Pitts angle.
Yes.
You know, so you've got Louisa defending Martin. And you do see her. This is the first time that he's performed surgery in the show. And this is really when you see Louisa kind of get that initial, this guy's medical prowess is amazing. And she starts with, you know, you did something very special today. And then she goes in and she reams Adrian Pitts.
Yes.
He's 10 times the man you'll ever be. So you're starting to see this respect and attraction caused by the medical prowess.
The attraction in Best Medicine sort of been alluded to in the past couple episodes. So we're starting to see that Louisa has definitely some attraction for Martin, and Martin's attraction for Louisa is there as well.
Yeah, and we saw that in the whole first season of Doc Martin too. But yeah, and then of course, I mean, in Doc Martin, you just get he blows it with medical stuff, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, we were cheering in that scene in the cab where his hand is moving over, and then we're like, and he moves back, and you're like, oh, come on. We were like, come on, Martin. And then he touches her, and then bam, like there's an opening, and bam, she's in.
Right.
And
then he kisses her back.
Yeah, she kisses him, he kisses her.
And in Best Medicine, they flipped that.
Right.
So Martin's at the end of this, sitting in the ambulance, taking a breath. Louisa comes over. He's saying he's upset that he didn't recognize these symptoms sooner, and she's saying, well, you just saved his life, and all these other things that could have distracted you, and no, you came right through. And he realizes that she is a supporter,
right,
and kisses her,
yeah.
and then sort of pulls back, and then she kisses him. So
and that's like okay. A little flipping of how things go, because in Best Medicine, that's right when the ambulance gets there. So the surgery hasn't been done. Peter Cronk they know he's going to be okay. Whereas in Doc Martin, you don't know he's going to be okay. And the surgery has to happen. Yeah. It's not until they're on the cab on the way home that their chemistry really hits. So poor Martin is an idiot, Martinelling him, and gets himself kicked out of the cab. But what the hell with Martin Best?
Well, the best explanation is they walk home, go up to her door, and talking about what a crazy long night it's been. And they've kissed a passionate embrace, and Louisa is clearly expecting Martin to come in. And Martin says,
like she's ready for him to come in.
And Martin says, you don't want. He doesn't quite finish that thought, but my impression is that he's not sure. He doesn't think that Louisa meant it. He doesn't think that he's good enough for her.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And so he's clearly got
something like that. Like you wouldn't want like me.
Right. A broken down doctor with this blood phobia problem.
And who knows? Like you don't know why. You don't know anything. That's because maybe it's something from his past that's haunting him too. A Rosemary related thing, which I'm still waiting for. Come back, Robert and Vanessa.
But there is something there.
Yeah, there's something there. Yeah, and she kissed him first a couple weeks ago when she won the blueberry thing. You're right. She's obviously interested.
Well, that was a very comparatively quick.
Well, he wasn't ready for it.
This one was certainly extended, and certainly Mark got to see a lot of that.
And they were leading up to it because they kind of
Yeah.
They were gonna sort of have a date with the bird watching.
Right.
They weren't going to go to special lengths to prepare anything, and yet she made meatloaf, he made fresh squeezed lemonade, which we find out after the fact.
Right. Right.
But we find that out before this, so you know they're both kind of going out. And they did say they were going to have a real date, and then that's when all this stuff started happening.
Mm-hmm.
The stage was set. I mean, they're indicating interest. What the heck is he doing? Why is he backing off?
Maybe he doesn't want to take advantage of her. These extraordinary situations wants a little bit of calm, cooler heads to prevail.
But don't say, we'll laugh it off. I'm sure that's what we both want. I mean, very inartfully done, if that was his intention, was to just say it was the adrenaline. I mean, he could start with that, like, it's been a long night.
Yeah.
I think it's his reticence to get close to anybody.
Could be.
I don't know. Because he does say something in the very first episode about when Louisa says something about her heart being broken, and he says something like I don't have any experience with that or something, but maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't want a broken heart. Maybe he doesn't feel worthy of her or something. I don't know.
Right,
we're just
something
theorizing.
like that.
But
Or that he doesn't think that, well, as I said, that she's that interested in him.
he's got it.
Or-
He's not that clueless.
Or that maybe he doesn't feel, as you said, worthy of her.
One thing that I didn't see in this one that we saw in the original was, I think Martin Ellingham tells Louisa the whole root cause of his blood failure.
Ah, yes. Right. Right. But seeing the patient, understanding that it was actually somebody's mother, somebody's wife, knowing that there's a family involved. And that was the thing that prevented him from operating, that it sort of froze him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So that's sort of an explanation, a hint of what's going on inside Martin Ellingham.
Right. But that's all we ever get in the whole series.
Right. That's as much as you get.
Yeah.
So.
And in this one, I guess I'm still a skeptic that we know the root cause of Martin Best's.
Has something to do with his sister.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well,
we
his
know
sister
why
being
he
killed.
and we know why he couldn't operate, and it's because
Operating on somebody who was
Very
basically
similar.
the same
Yeah.
age as his sister was.
with the same problem, a lot of blood. But we don't know, was it just the presence of the blood of the surgery that needed to be done then that gives him a blood phobia? Like, we don't know how things go from I froze because this is similar to now I can't stand blood at all. But we didn't get that explanation in Doc Martin either.
Maybe we'll get more of an explanation here. I suspect we will.
Maybe. I gotta admit, the tea made me think of Eleanor Glasson with her little
yeah.
tincture or whatever,
Right.
and the stuff getting into James Henry's bottle. The
yeah.
fact that it was all natural, because like right off the bat, I thought there's something in that tea, but it ends up there was nothing in the
Right.
tea.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It was-
Besides mushrooms.
Right, which were non-hallucinogenic.
mushrooms,
They were
yeah.
fine, but you know, they were certainly teasing that the whole time that there's something in those. And those, there, we do find out that the Cloofes, although they seem sweet, they're taking advantage of Aunt
Oh,
Sarah.
they absolutely, yeah.
So not very nice people. Yeah, yeah. I was wondering when they're in the woods, Mark and Martin, and they're looking for the mushrooms, and Mark's like, you know, we're on a real manhunt here, Doc, and Martin's like, we're hunting mushrooms, not men. But I'm thinking on a manhunt. And was that a little Clunes
be.
thing? I don't know. So
Since he was in a series called Manhunt.
yes. I liked it. I thought it was a good episode to me because it was much more. I like when there's a lot of drama, I guess. I like when there's medical stuff going on that needs to be resolved by the doc.
Looking ahead, maybe. Elaine, an actress, applying for drama school
Yeah.
in New York. I presume New York City. Does that mean that we'll have a new secretary?
Well,
She's always wanted to get out of Portwenn.
she has, and what just occurred to me was, is Al going to volunteer to mail her application?
Getting back to another
Yep.
another parallel
Yep.
with
And
Doc
will he
Martin.
fail to do that because he wants her to stay? That would actually give us a little piece of information as to whether when Al was complimenting her last week on how good her show was, whether he was just trying to keep her in Portwenn or if he really does love
right.
it.
Right.
I don't know. This Al seems much sweeter, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he would not submit an application for her. I don't think he would sabotage her
I
that
guess
way.
we shall see.
We shall see. And plus, we're making all this up
And
based on.
Elaine is certainly Elaine for Best Medicine. There's no comparison with Elaine
Oh.
in Doc Martin.
Yeah. But that was Pauline, who he wasn't going to submit the
No,
nursing
right,
school thing.
right,
Yeah.
but-
Because Pauline could have been a fine
yeah.
receptionist. And plus she went to phlebotomy
Yeah.
school.
Well, Pauline had a lot of initiative.
Yeah. I still want to see Elaine in this show.
Hmm.
I want her to stay. I like the actress quite a bit.
Okay.
And I think she's got a ton of range. And we've already seen her be so upset about her mother marrying Dum Dum, the principal, and how sad she was about it. I really think she can be anything that they want her to be. So she already she doesn't necessarily have phlebotomy training, but she
Right.
deals with wounds, right?
Right.
There's no
right.
reason she couldn't learn to be that type of assistant
Agreed.
and turn into the mature person that Morwenna is. So we'll see. But yeah, I just thought about I'm going to apply for acting school. I hope Al doesn't do that.
I agree. It doesn't seem.
That needy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, I like the fact that they're still talking about the house being sold out from under and Sarah, just because that
right.
means Vanessa and Robert need to come back and resolve that.
Yes.
I would like to see those two again.
Although they could resolve it off screen.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we'll see them this season. I'd like to, but I don't think we will. But we don't know how that's all going to work out. So, yeah. Where would you rate it?
Scale from 1 to 10? I'd give it a 9.
Well, very good. Yeah. Any predictions on what you think is going to happen next?
Well, there's going to be, my prediction, more tension between Martin and Louisa about what happened, what will happen.
Yeah, they have to discuss that.
So, yeah. Well, how much did they discuss that in Doc Martin?
Well, that was the end of the season.
So my prediction is, unlike Doc Martin, Louisa and Martin Best will actually discuss this.
Yeah.
And
They have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have 3 more episodes.
And Martin will not have a sip of wine and clunk out. Predictions.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see that this season, because even though that's the last episode of season 2, so that would be the 14th episode of Doc Martin. So that's 14, and they're going to have 13 in here.
Aren't there 25 episodes?
There's 12 next season, so that's season 2. Yeah, so we end on 13 here.
I'll accept the word of one who knows.
I make a point of it.
It is your podcast.
That's true. There's still details I don't know. Anyway, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this. This is your Doc Martin section. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Little hiatus coming up in the schedule. And if you've enjoyed this, I would ask that you like the episode, subscribe to the feed, and leave comments if you've got ideas, especially Doc Martin people. If you have some Doc Martin ideas, I'm open to hearing what they are. Judy the Newbie has finished up her series, so I could use a new Doc Martin newbie. And we're working on the Psychology of Portwenn for the seasons 8, 9, and 10. That should be coming out soon. And I could use your ideas for what you'd like to see me do next. That's all for now. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, folks. Bye.